Hi, everybody. Well, this is meteorologist Brett Thacker. I am joined today by Dave Shiner, our audio engineer. But today, and for the next few weeks, he is going to be serving as my co-host extraordinaire. Our very own meteorologist, Dan Tomaso, can't be with us here today. And actually, we're a day late with this podcast because, Dave, we have some exciting news just in here to Weather Wagers. And
Yeah.
that would Dan Tomaso is a daddy, and we are excited for him. His baby girl was born yesterday. He and his wife, Brittany, welcomed their baby daughter, Colette, into the world, and we couldn't be happier for them. But it does go to show you that even though you are very important, David, because you bring us the audio every week, and I'm very important with my hot takes, Dan really makes this podcast run, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's sometimes the tech guy behind the tech guy, as they say, even in your weather graphics, I know that he takes the lead on that for you sometimes.
He does. So we are coming to you here today, just a couple of talking heads. We hope to be back next week with some of the more fancy graphics and video. It's going to be a short podcast this week. Dan actually had Colette yesterday on podcast day. So we're scrambling with schedules. We are both very busy, but we're going to get this in. So that was our first order of business, to give a shout out to Dan. And we're going to talk about more about Dan in just a bit, but our time is limited here this week. So first of all, happy June to you, David. We're in full baseball season now, aren't we?
It is hitting season, as Charlie used to say back in the day, and hopefully the Phils start hitting a little bit more. We've been very inconsistent as of late, for sure.
We're going to get into that, but I do want to, of course, talk about a couple of things, and that is the rainouts. No graphics this week. It's been so dry across a good part of the country. We have a 5-inch rain deficit here in Pennsylvania, and across the United States, there are areas of drought, but we still like to look at potential games if you're thinking about wagering on baseball, and you've got to be a diehard to do that. But if you are, Dave, there's 3 series this week that could have some rain with them. The Rays travel to Boston, and the Red Sox. This backdoor cold front you may have heard us talking about, or you may have heard about it in the news. It's moving inland from the coast. That's why it's called a backdoor. It's moving the opposite way than they normally do. It's moving to the west. And that could affect the Red Sox game on Saturday. Here we go with the Mets again. This is where we do miss your soundboard.
Yeah. We can do our best to emulate it.
They could have some issues with the Blue Jays with rain on Saturday, and then the Rockies and the Royals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with some pop-up showers and storms. So those are the series that may have some rain impact. What do you know about those teams? Anything? Nothing? Share it now. I mean, the Mets, again, continue to find the rain. We say they've been struggling. Well, guess who they're playing right now? They're playing the Phillies, and they haven't been struggling against us.
No, honestly, the pitching hasn't been too bad. I mean, the first game we lost 2-0. The second game we lost 4-1, which was last night from our record date. Currently, I believe they are up 2-1 at the moment as we speak.
Today, the getaway,
grab one
getaway game.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully they can get one here. And, it just seems like the hitting is there for the Phillies, but just not when they need it. And that's when runners are on base. It doesn't, we've had a lot of solo shots, 1 or 2 run home runs here and there, but they're not playing the small ball, as we like to call it, and getting those runs that are really necessary when you have your opportunities.
Yeah, and honestly, that seems to be the case. Meanwhile, though, I mean, nobody's running away with the division. I know the Phillies are 7.5 games back, but the Braves have had their own pitching struggles. Dan keeps reminding us that they've got some injuries as well. But has it been? We're lucky that we're not like 10 games back, wouldn't you say? Because we did split with the Braves.
Did, and that kind of kept us in check. The problem is whenever the Phillies get a couple games under their belt where they get close to 500, it seems like they lose 3 or 4 in a row again. They haven't been able to put like a constant, stream of just winning series. They'll go win 1, lose 2, then lose 2, and then win 4. It's just been very inconsistent. That's the big thing on this season: inconsistency.
Wouldn't you say, as Phillies fans, I know what Dan preaches. It's early. The Phillies got on a run last year. Baseball matters in September and October. It doesn't matter so much in May, and now moving into June. But I got to tell you, as Phillies fans, weren't we expecting more than this?
I think so. You got to remember, we're coming off of this real big high from the World Series push and everything. And I think everybody got so caught up in that, thinking that, like, hey, we should be coming out of the gate storming, and we should be the one with the 10 10-game lead in the division. But as Dan has pointed out in the past, we really haven't had any divisional games up until this last week or two. And I'm looking at the schedule right now. Obviously, we have the 3-game series with the Mets that we're on the third game of, but then we're at Washington for 3. So that you should pencil in 3 wins there. I mean, if you can't beat Washington right now, you're a bad baseball team. So hopefully that gets you a little closer, but then you're home against Detroit, home against LA. That's a tough one. Another 4-game series against Arizona away, Oakland away. And then there is a stretch here where we play Atlanta and the Mets at home for 6 straight games. If they can't get at least a 2-game lead off of that, this division might be running away with them,
Well, and I will be at the Dodgers game on the 10th of June. We're going to that one, and I will be able to report what I see. I'm hoping we start to see some momentum by that point. That's in 10 days.
Yeah.
And I will be able to report back to you right here on this podcast, which, by the way, we will say again, Dan is going to be missing for 6 weeks. He'll be taking some time with his family. So it's just going to be Dave and I. I'm on vacation next week. We're going to try to throw something together for you. We are committed to putting out material here, with or without Dan. It may be a little rough without him.
Yeah,
Speaking
I'm
of
no
rough,
weather expert by any means, so
I can handle that part, but I don't want to talk to myself, David.
I got you.
You're representing the Phillies nicely with your hat. But I speaking of being tough and speaking of Dan, part of the discussion we were going to have this week with him here, and it would have been a lot of fun. Is Dan has been going on a Twitter tirade over Phillies fans really writing this team off. I don't think you and I have written them off by any stretch, but we try to be realists here. And quite honestly, when they're playing stinky baseball, we're going to call it out. But Dan has taken on John Stolness, who is very active on Twitter. And in fact, we want to have him on as a guest at some point on the podcast. He hosts the Phillies podcast Hitting Season, and he hosts an Eagles podcast called Eye on the Enemy. He writes for The Good Fight and Bleeding Green in the DC area. John tweeted this after that, the last time we played the Diamondbacks a week ago. He said, "We had such high hopes for the Phillies, so much enthusiasm, and it's just being wasted." Now, I don't really find anything wrong with that tweet. I've said it.
Yeah, he's speaking the truth. Like I said, I think we had high hopes, no pun intended, but
good one.
Yeah, HK in our hearts, as they say. But I think, like I said earlier, everybody was so geared up for this season because of the way last season ended, and stumbling out of the gates has put a sour taste in everybody's mouth. But, the thing that always cracks me up is every Philly season, they always tweet out 2008, this was the record, and it matches up with whatever the record currently is. And then they were like 2011, this is where we're at this point of the season. It's always really, really close. So, to write them off completely seems, a little premature, but if they don't start hitting, it's not gonna happen. They gotta get it when they need it, and that's the problem is you have these 10-1 games they win and then they lose 1-0. Like
they have the talent.
Inconsistency is killing us.
It's inconsistent. So Dan responded to John and he said, "Just under 3/4 of the season left. All will be well. I'll say it for the millionth time. Did we not learn anything after last year? It may not be pretty all of the time, but this team will rebound." Dan confident. John tweeted again later in the day. This was on May 24th when the Phillies were dropping games to the Diamondbacks. He said, "Seems pretty clear the Phillies are going to get swept by the Diamondbacks here. Starting tomorrow night, they play 4 in Atlanta, 3 in New York, and then the games you referenced, Dave, 3 in DC. This is a fork in the road. They righted the ship right about here last year. They need to do it again." Dan responded, "What if they come back today? So much negativity." I responded, "It's called being realistic, Dan. They ain't coming back." Well, guess what? The Phillies did come back that day.
They did. They put together a nice win. And, now that, like you said, that Atlanta series, they did split right after. We thought there was some good momentum coming off of that Arizona win, the final in 10 innings, but they did drop the next game to Atlanta,
Right.
So,
and the pitching has been okay. You talk about the hitting, but I mean, I haven't been like blown away. Zach Wheeler's had some couple of really good games, but I haven't been blown away by any of the pitching. And then, we had another, he's a former producer of ours at ABC 27, Ben Shad. He tweeted as part of this Twitter tirade Dan went on. He tweeted, "It takes one swing of the bat to change a ball game. Some of you boo birds on my feed need to get over your Sixers hangover and remember that this is baseball." And Dan Tomaso tweeted to him, "Amen, amen, I say to you." So I had to eat my words, and I owned it on Twitter that I was wrong. Like I said, Dan and I want to have, when Dan gets back, we'd love to have John Stolness on to have a friendly debate about the Phillies. And I think he's catering to a lot of the Philly talk radio guys that are a bit on the negative side. And Dan just wants everybody to chill out. So I get that, but I still try to be at least somewhat realistic. In order for Dan to be right. Now, first of all, again, they came back against the Diamondbacks, but guess what? They need to start going on a 5 or 6 game win streak, and then I'll feel better. The inconsistencies, Dan will be right about half the time, and then they'll start to drop these other games again. You said it best. The inconsistencies have to stop. So I guess I ask you this. When you said you had the schedule up, we have to finish. We're finishing with the Mets today. Certainly not a win yet. We play 3 in DC. You talked about more divisional games coming up. What do you think their June record is going to be? Can we at least get back to 500?
I hope so. I mean, you have some big series like that LA series you're gonna be at. The big thing that I notice is in 30 days they're playing 28 games. Not a lot of break there, not a lot. And there's a West Coast trip in there, and they go from Oakland on the 18th to back home June 20th against Atlanta for 3 and then New York for 3.
See, that's
have
tough
to capitalize on those divisional games. That's the thing. If they can go 500 for the rest of the month and win those series, they're back above 500 and control their destiny yet again. And I know we've talked about it before. June happens to be hitting season for one guy in particular, and that's Kyle Schwarber. The guy is known to go off in June, and we're going to need his bat because right now, outside of Bryce Harper and Castellanos, no one's really hitting. I mean, Baum's had some big games here and there. In fact, I saw a funny meme where it was like a McLaren underneath a carport, and it's like Bryce Harper and Nick, and it's like this, sports car in a trashy neighborhood, and it's like the rest of the Phillies, and I don't think that's completely true, but we got to have some other guys stepping up here.
Well, but again, now look at where Bowman's.
Yeah, now he's officially on the DL, right?
Right. Yeah, the IL or whatever.
IL, IR, whatever acronym you want to use.
He's out. Okay. Yeah. He's out, and
not playing.
This makes it a challenge. But again, to your point, that Schwarber's got to get out. They have other players, and they need to step it up. All right, let's move on. College football talk. We mentioned last week that Black Friday would be a special day now for Penn State. They are going to be taking on Michigan State at Ford Field. There was a little bit of fallout from this because, again, some of these TV deals have trickled out now. Penn State's got to play on a Friday. It's a little easier that it happens to be the day after Thanksgiving. But this game is going to be at 7:30. It is a primetime game on NBC. Remember, that is going to be a showcase game.
Yeah.
No other game on that day. You don't have to go up against the Ohio State Michigan game the next day. I think it's a decent little rivalry. Penn State, maybe they're playing for more that weekend. We don't know about Michigan State. I was going to play the clips of Brad Powers last week. Maybe Shiner, we can figure out how to do that a little bit later this summer when I'm back from vacation and we're back to home base, but we can at least summarize them for the audience now. If you haven't had a chance, that was our highest rated episode last week with Brad Powers on it. We had hundreds of people listen to that episode, and I'm telling you, it was amazing content. If you haven't listened, go check it out. One of the things that he said was he thinks it is going in the wrong direction for Mel Tucker and Michigan State. And so part of the thing that I'm going to do over the next 6 weeks in Dan's absence is just kind of tee you up a little bit and ask some questions I'm asking. And, do you agree with that? And is Michigan State not a team that Penn State should be afraid of right now?
I mean, recent games in general, no, that they have not played up to par, but yet it always seems like they have this little run where everybody's like, oh, hey, Michigan State's looking okay early in the season. And then Mel does his thing, and there we are. I don't know. It's still a marquee matchup on a primetime game. If you can't get up for those games, then why are we playing college football? I mean,
Well,
I think there's some extra juice to that,
is it going to be about getting up for that game? What if their season's long over? Remember, this is the last game of the season. If they are going in the wrong direction, like Brad Powers thinks they are, the only thing at that point that may get them up is if it's for a bowl game.
Yeah.
And if you're going to the Pop-Tart Bowl, is that going to be good enough to get the players up? I don't know.
Well, it kind of is very similar to, I think, that what Penn State experiences for their whiteout. No matter how bad Penn State's been, it's something about those whiteout games that, like I said, there's a little bit extra juice. I think if you get your fan base involved, under the lights is always a different atmosphere. I think any team can be dangerous in their own stadium at a primetime game when you get the students all fired up. Now, it being Black Friday, how many students are going to be on campus at that point?
But remember, Dave, it's not on campus, and this is actually where I think it benefits Penn State. It's at Ford Field.
I mean, that's still a home game for Michigan State.
It is, but I'm here to tell you, what has Penn State run into in East Lansing the last several trips? Weather.
Yeah, true.
That's what we talked about on this podcast. They're not going to have to deal with weather. How many students? That's a weird weekend anyway, with it being Thanksgiving. I think this benefits Penn State truly, that they get it at a neutral site. They don't have to worry about any weird East Lansing weather. And if they are playing for something more, or even if they're playing to get a double-digit win on the season, listen, I think it helps them out a lot because Brad Powers likes Penn State. I still think there's question marks there. Again, go listen to the full interview. We'll try to play some of his clips in the coming weeks. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to move on to the hot topic this week. The SEC meetings are going on in Destin. All the coaches and Mr. Paul Feinbaum are on the beach this week. They're trying to hash out a lot of things with NIL and football. And one of the hot topics that people have kind of become disgusted with actually is whether the SEC should move to 9 games or stay at 8 games. I don't think a decision has come yet. How are they not playing 9 games? I think they're waiting to see if ESPN is going to give them more money. Why would ESPN give them more money? They already signed that contract. They should be playing 9 games to give their fans a better experience. Nobody wants to watch Alabama play New Mexico State.
Very
Nobody.
true. Yeah.
Your quick take on that. Should the SEC move to 9 conference games next year when the new deal starts in 24 and Oklahoma and Texas come in? Plus, there's more teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think they should, just because we all know when it gets to that end of the year for some of these SEC teams, you have the Iron Bowls and the matchups in Death Valley and all those things. And then all of a sudden, like you say, Georgia, Northwestern, and the coastal Carolinas and all those all of a sudden pop up on their schedule. I'd rather be an SEC game, outside of it, everybody playing Vanderbilt for their extra game or something,
Yeah, but even that I'd rather watch than an FCS opponent. And
exactly. And something that has a little weight on what the outcome for the conference is going to be, Now, is it more of a scheduling issue for them at this point, like making sure that everybody can get to a good opponent? Are they trying to make it so it's a marquee matchup, or is it just throwing an extra game to some of these other teams that aren't at the top of their conference? That's I think what it's going to be.
I think those middle tier teams are worried about having an extra loss and maybe sitting out a bowl game because of that. But your Georgias and Alabamas, I mean, they have already said they don't care. They'll play an extra game. Plus, maybe if it does mean more money, again, I don't, why, if I'm ESPN, why am I paying more money? I mean, they have the rights. If you want to play an extra game, great. We'll televise it. This contract was done, let's not do what the Big Ten did and not dot our I's and cross our T's beforehand. But by the way, if you have a 16-team league, you should be playing 9 conference games.
Oh, for sure. I mean, outside of that, are they going to get 2 buys then during the season?
And again, I like cupcakes as much as the next guy, but not in college football season.
Not at the end of your schedule either.
Correct. So some final thoughts here. We are going to try our darndest to keep this podcast feed alive and well. Shiner and I will give you our thoughts on all things Phillies. I think we're going to have an Eagles show too when Dan comes back here in July, but I will probably be trying to do this podcast from the beach next week, if that's okay with you, David.
On location. Watch out.
On location. I think we'll do it. And there will always be things to talk about as well through the summer. I mean, this stuff never stops, right?
It's a year-round process. There's only one day, and that's after the All-Star break where there's no sports. So we all know we're going to be busy.
We're going to be busy. Thank you so much for your time. Again, congratulations to Dan.
Yes, congrats, Dan and Brittany.
Their new daughter, Colette. What a great name. And we'll try to throw a picture on here too sometime when we get it from Dan. Shiner and I have to dash, but this has been fun. Remember, Weather Wagers, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. You can find us on YouTube and the website at abc27.com. That's it for this week. Happy June, everybody. We'll see you soon.